Hello everyone, my name is Stacie Ellis. I am a registered dietitian nutritionist and I work at the University of Texas at Arlington in the campus recreation department as the consulting dietitian. And I wanted to provide you guys with some nutrition tips during this time. I know a lot of us, we are changing the way we eat because we're not able to go out to the grocery stores, go out to eat as much, and so we're having to make some changes to our diet. And as a dietitian, I want to do my part in terms of sharing with you some tips so that way you can still be very healthy during this time. So with that said, the average American actually eats out 4 to 5 times a week, making 82% of their meals at home. With that said, that means with this lockdown, a lot of people had to make some changes. They're not able to go out to restaurants as much, and so they are forced to eat at home. And unfortunately, a lot of these meals that are made at home, they're not necessarily always made from scratch. They're not always the healthiest. A lot of them are convenience meals, right? The frozen dinners, right? The TV dinners, things like that. Things that are fast and quick and not necessarily the healthiest. And now, since we are eating from home, that means we have 3 meals during the day that we need to prepare for. And so it becomes even more important that these meals are healthy meals that we prepare. Some of us, we have children who now they're at home for their lunches and breakfasts, and so you also need to prepare 3 meals for them as well. So definitely an adjustment for many of us. However, this could be a good thing because for thousands of years, we cooked for ourselves. That's how we used to eat. Now, we go and we get fast food, we go to restaurants, and when we go to the grocery store, about half the foods we make are foods that have already been processed a little bit for us already. So going back to cooking might actually be a good thing. I've been watching this series on Netflix called Cooked, and there's a saying that he states, cooking is what makes us human. And I think that's so true. When we cook, not only are we eating delicious food, but there's cultural aspects to cooking, there's traditional aspects to cooking. There's so many different levels when it comes to cooking that when we don't cook, we miss out on. We miss out on the nutrition, we miss out on the traditions and the culture. And so it might actually be a good thing for us to get back into the kitchen and cooking. Now, we also used to be more one with nature and the food that we produced. We used to hunt and gather, and the fact that we had to go and kill an animal, if you really think about that, to get to a point where you have to kill an animal to eat. Most of us, we can't do that. Like the thought of killing a chicken in order for us to eat it like you can't fathom doing such a thing. But you'll eat the chicken, right? Which goes to show like where we have been mentally, like we're so far connected from the source of the food now. Farming, the same thing. It takes time for those crops to grow. You have to put in the work, you have to water it, you have to fertilize it, all those different things. And so once you actually eat it, you have put in all these hours just to produce that particular crop. But nowadays, we don't have to think about any of that. We just go to the supermarket, we buy a lot of processed foods, we buy the crops that are already been produced for us, and so we lose that connection. So I think it's actually a good thing that we are cooking more. And hopefully, past this pandemic, people will continue to cook even more. So with that, I wanted to give you guys some tips. Before I get to the recipes and different eating tips, I want to talk to you about other tips that you can use to implement while you're preparing for this time. First and foremost is gardening. Now, I am not an expert in gardening by any means, but I think that it is important that we try to garden for ourselves because we don't really know what the future will hold. We don't know if we're going to have another time where we have, some of these crops that we're used to getting from other countries, if they're going to be on a hold, or we don't know. So it's good to have a back plan, right? So I actually started gardening myself in the beginning of this quarantine process, and it actually is not as bad as you think. It really isn't, okay? I know if you never gardened before, it might seem like it's very hard, but really it's not that bad. I recommend you start with some easy crops: lettuce, tomatoes, cucumbers. All these listed here are considered to be relatively easy. As far as knowing when to crop or when to start planting, there are different resources available. The almanac.com allows you to go in and put in your zip code, and it'll actually show you the appropriate times on when you should plant different fruits and vegetables based off of the area where you live. So they take into account the environment, the soil, how hot it is, all of that. So that's a great resource. And for those of us who are in the Region 3, or should I say the Central Texas area, so that includes areas from like Austin all the way up to Dallas and Denton and all of that. These resources here are good for us because it is geared just to us in terms of what foods we should plant when. So this is a vegetable planting calendar that you can use. I like this actually better than the one on the almanac because it includes more fruits and vegetables. So you can use that as a resource. And then this right here tells you month by month what you should be doing in your garden. So it'll tell you when you should fertilize, when you should start planting, things like that. So what should you do if you're starting a garden? First and foremost, you want to get some containers, so it can be a planter or just some type of bucket, and you want to poke some holes in it. So you can drill holes. I just use a hammer and nails on mine, and you just want some drainage holes so the water can come out, or you can go straight into the ground. That's perfectly fine too. Just make sure you have some good soil. Some people, they like to do the raised beds, but a lot of those raised bed kits are very expensive. Just starting off, you don't need to spend all that money to make your garden. You just need some dirt, really. So get yourself some good soil. If you are starting off, just buy the bagged soil. That's perfectly fine. You don't need to make your own compost first. If you are trying to make your own compost, it will take 3 to 12 months to make, which you probably don't have that time. So just start off with the bag soil. But then you can work on making your own compost, so for in the future you can use that instead of buying soil every year. So to make compost, all you need is some dirt, leaves, twigs, vegetable and fruit scraps, and eggshells. That's really all you need. And you put it in a container, and after some time it will turn into dirt. Okay, now there's more to it than that, but that's the gist of it. All right, now what you do want to avoid putting animal products in there. So you don't want to put meat in there. You don't want to put animal poop in there from animals that eat meat either. So you have a dog, you don't want to put the dog poop in there. Okay. Now, if you do have an animal that eats plants, such as rabbits, cows, chickens, that poop can be added, and it's supposed to actually help the compost. So, but if you don't worry about it. Just start with those scraps, and it'll be perfectly fine. You'll still make good soil. All right. Now, if you're just starting off, I recommend you buy baby plants instead of doing the seeds. You could use the seeds, it's fine. It's just a lot of times people aren't really aware how to plant the seeds. But starting off with the plants, it's pretty good, okay? And then you want to learn for that plant what the appropriate amount of water and sun it needs. So for me, being that I just started my garden, I put all my plants inside pots, and I didn't really know where around my house would be the best place for them for sun. And so I had some pots near the front of my house, I had some on the side. I realized that on one side of my house it's very sunny and the plants were drying out. And so that's how I learned, okay, I need to move them to the other side of the house. So that's another reason why it might be good to put them in pots at least initially, so that way you can figure out where around your house would be the best, or yeah, around your house where it would be best for you to actually plant, okay? And then be patient. It takes time for these crops to grow. Now, some of these crops grow faster than others. I planted lettuce, and I get lettuce just about every week. I'm able to pick my lettuce and make a salad every week. I have kale growing, I have Swiss chard growing, and those are growing quite rapidly, and I'm able to produce them. But I also have tomatoes, and I have bell peppers and zucchinis, and they're nowhere near ready. And it's going to be some time before they get to a point where I can harvest them. So you just have to be patient. All right, so I know not everyone's going to garden, but everyone has to grocery shop, right? So I recommend you try not to grocery shop more than 1 to 2 times a month. You want to avoid all that excess contact, right? So you need a game plan, of course, if you're going to go grocery shopping. So make your grocery list. We'll talk about that more a little bit later. You do have the option of ordering online so you can pick up. Obviously, that is very safe to do that. It's probably your best option. That's what they recommend. However, some of us still like to go to the grocery store on our own. I know for me, I still like to go. I just make sure I cover, I wear my face cover, and I practice, the healthy habits. But if you are going to go to the grocery store, you're going to want to have a game plan. What I like to do, I like to write my grocery list in order based off of when I walk into the store. So all I have to do is go in order of my grocery list, and I can pick up those items in order. So I think about it as I'm writing my list. I put it in order, okay? And what you want to avoid is browsing, right? This is not the time to be trying to compare so many different things. This is not the time to be adventurous, and yeah, this is just not the time. You can do that online, but in the store you just want to go, grab what you need, pay for it, and leave, right? Also, keep in mind that food shortages have occurred. The meat and poultry industry has been hit hard with the virus. There's been a lot of people who actually got the virus, and so they had to close some plants. And so there has been a decrease in the supply of different meat products in some stores. That's why you might see signs where they say, okay, you can only purchase this amount of meat. And that's wise, because eventually we might have no meat available if we continue and more and more plants end up closing. Now, it hasn't really hit the dairy and eggs, but I can see that it might end up being a problem for them too in the future. Right now, it's not really a concern for all the different types of produce and grain products, which I think is great because those are the healthy foods, right? So you don't really have to worry about that as of yet. Canned foods, a lot of people think canned foods, there's a shortage in canned foods, but there's not. It's just there's a lot of people buying them now and they're not able to stock the shelves fast enough. But there's not a production decrease in canned foods. So being that there is a food shortage, that may mean you're going to have to make some changes to your diet if you're normally consuming a special type of diet. So particularly if you're doing a low carb diet or a diet that requires a lot of protein, you're probably going to have to make some changes. And I recommend for everyone that you just focus on my plate, just a balanced diet and meal. And I know for some of these people, if you're used to not eating carbs, if you're used to doing keto or high protein diets, some of you are afraid of carbs. Now that's a whole different story in itself. Carbohydrates do not make you fat, despite what many people keep claiming. The literature is very clear on this. It's very hard for carbohydrates to turn into fat. Yes, carbohydrates can turn into fat. Yes, that is true. But it's not an efficient process. It's very hard to do. It's more likely that you're going to have fat turn into fat from all the fat that's in your meat than the carbohydrates turn into fat in your body. Okay? Now, some of you guys may say, well, every time I eat bread, I feel so bloated and I puff up. You must understand there's a difference between water weight and fat weight. They're not the same. Carbohydrates has hydrates, it has water. So yes, when you eat carbohydrates, you will put on water weight, which for some people makes them look puffy. Okay? But I'd rather be puffy than die from starvation, right? Like it's not that serious. Okay, this is not the time to become the most cut person in the world and the most, in my opinion, I don't think that that's what's most important right now. Okay, we're having a food shortage, and so you just need to get some nutrients in you, right? And once we are able to get back and people are able to produce more of the meats, and that's what you want to do, that's fine, but I think right now that shouldn't be the main focus. So with that said, what should you stock up on? Well, dried beans and lentils are definitely great. That's a great alternative for your proteins. Potatoes, they're the most satiating vegetables, so you definitely want those. Rice, they're very cheap, and you can easily pair that with your beans. Or you can do other grains like quinoa, millet, and barley. It's just rice it's easier to get rice than those other ones. Oats, you can easily buy a big container of oats and use that. You can also get healthy cereals, pastas. I like to use breadcrumbs in my cooking, so I put breadcrumbs. Breads, tortillas, pita breads. You can also get eggs for cooking different recipes. I don't necessarily recommend eating eggs in the morning throughout this whole time. Really, I know that there's a lot of debate about the health aspects of eggs. As a dietitian, my standpoint is you should not be eating eggs every single day. So, yes, you can buy eggs. It can help you with some of the recipes, but you should also buy flax seeds. Flax seeds can be used as an egg replacement, which I have the recipe on this slide show for you to look at. Flour, so you can make your own baked goods. Yeast, if you're able to find yeast. I have yet to find yeast anywhere. Baking powder, baking soda, and salt. Frozen fish. Lean meat and poultry. Again, there's a shortage though. Canned foods, such as canned tomatoes, tuna, beans, and veggies. Pasta sauces, broths, and condiments. nut butters, dried fruit, and nuts. Now, notice I did not put on here produce. You should be buying those too, but you're probably not going to stock up on those because it will go bad, right? So you do still want to buy them. You're just only going to buy as much as you need before they go bad for the most part. I recommend that you store what you need for a week or so in your kitchen of the dry foods. And then all the other dry foods, I recommend you put them somewhere else in your house. Why? There is a psychological aspect that happens when you see a lot of food, you kind of want to eat more. So if you put a lot of food in your kitchen, you're going to want to eat more food than you normally would. So I know for me, I have my extra food in my guest bedroom, and as I go through the stuff in my kitchen, when I need to replenish, I just go in there and I replenish in my kitchen. Okay. You also want to freeze whatever you can too. So if you notice, like your produce, remember I stated earlier, you do still want to buy produce, but it will go bad. So you want to eat those first, right? But if you notice that they're starting to go bad, you can try to freeze them. So freezing your leafy greens and your berries, you'll blanch it first and then you can freeze it. Your bananas, you can also freeze. You can peel them and then freeze them. And then just about all your other vegetables too. Your onions, zucchini, all of those things you can freeze. All right. Now, as far as making your produce last as long as it can, there are different tips and tricks. I don't have enough time here to discuss all of those. However, I will say that there are certain fruits and vegetables that don't have to go into the refrigerator. I know you only have a certain amount of space in the refrigerator. That needs to be mainly for your berries and your leafy green vegetables, those things that will go bad if you leave them out on the counter. A lot of people are not aware that a lot of your fruits and vegetables don't have to go in the fridge. So in the purple here, you see that apples, if you're going to eat the apples within 7 days, they don't need to go in the fridge. Bananas, we all know, but citrus fruits, mangoes, melons, papayas, persimmons, pineapples, plantains, pomegranates. For vegetables, basil, cucumbers, eggplants, garlic, ginger, jicama, onions, peppers, potatoes, pumpkins, sweet potatoes, tomatoes, and winter squashes don't need to. And then there's some fruits that you will ripen on the counter first before you refrigerate. So avocados, kiwis, and then all your nectarines, peaches, plums, things like that, and then pears. All right. So before you go grocery shopping, you actually want to plan, right? I kind of already talked about this a little. What I like to do is meal plan, and I do this whether it's quarantine time or not. I always meal plan. So I recommend you look at what you already have, because you don't want to like overstock up on stuff, right? So look at what you already have in stock. Come up with recipes that you can use those ingredients for. Look in cookbooks, magazines, and different things to come up with other recipes that you might want to use during your month or 2 weeks, however long you decide, and make your grocery list based off of that. You also want to make a fast food meal list. And these food items you want to buy too, because there might be some days where you'll be too tired to cook. I know I have my meal plan. I have 14 days worth of meals that I planned, but I am also a human and I get tired sometimes. And so I have other meals too that I have planned and I have stocked up. So like some of the things that we like to have as fast meals are different types of sandwiches, so like fish sandwiches, burgers, things like that. Burritos, burrito bowls. We like to do a lot of different types of Tex-Mex meals, pastas. So have that list too. And if you don't eat it all within 2 weeks, that's fine. That means you even have more food to last throughout the month. But at least you have it so that way you're not stressed. Now, remember, I had your stock up list of food items that you should be purchasing. So make sure when you're planning all your meals that you're accounting for, the beans and rice and potatoes and things, okay? You don't want to buy a large surplus of these and then not even have it planned out that you're going to use it. So with that, I have some recipes that I want to share with you guys that you might want to use during this time. So starting off with breakfast, remember I said that you should buy oats. So there's different oatmeal recipes that you definitely can do, but an easy, just remember that you need at least a half a cup of oats, and you can add in a half a cup of fruit, whatever type of fruit you like. I like to do blueberries, or you can do dried fruit, 2 tablespoons of dried fruit, cooked in your milk or milk substitute. And then you can add in other things like flaxseed, nuts, nut butters, things like that. I also like to make pitas. So I'll take my pita bread and I'll put it in the toaster. I like it a little toasted. And I'll add in peanut butter inside with apples. And I like to sprinkle in some cinnamon. But you definitely can put other fruit inside there as well. And then other things that you can make, muffins, pancakes, waffles, they're all nutritious breakfasts that you can make. Try to add in fruit when you can. So you can put in dried fruit or fresh fruit. You can put in canned pumpkin if you have that, different nuts and seeds. And when you're making these, remember I said that you only have so many eggs. So it's good to make the egg substitute. So I have 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed, and then you add 3 tablespoons of water. And you mix it together and you let it sit for about 5 minutes, and then it'll turn into this egg binder or egg-like binder that you can use in your recipes. Now, if you need more than 3 eggs, that's the maximum amount of egg replacement you can do on here. So you can do 3 tablespoons of flaxseed, but if you need more than that, it's not going to work. Ideas for lunch and dinner. So remember I said you should buy some beans. And if you never cooked beans, it's actually very easy. You want to put the beans in a container with some water, and you want to make sure that there's a lot of extra water in there. So if I have a Tupperware container and half the container is my dried beans, I'm going to fill that container with double the amount of water at least. And then you soak it overnight. You'll see that the beans are going to expand. You're going to drain out that water, and then it's ready to be cooked. So when you cook it, you have the option, you can cook it on the stove, in a crock pot, or in a pressure cooker. You add water back in, and you'll cook it the appropriate amount of time until it's soft. Now, I like to add bouillon and onion to mine while it's cooking, but if you need a plain flavored bean, obviously you don't need to add that. And then what do you do with the beans? So there's so many different things. What I like to do, especially with like chickpeas or my white beans, I like to put them in a pan and saute them. I don't put any oil. I just I use the liquid that's already in the bean, and I season them with I like Tex-Mex, so chili powder, cumin, onion powder, salt and pepper, and I set it on the pan until it gets kind of puffy and kind of crunchy, not all the way crunchy, and it's so good. You can also, some people, they like to put it in an oven. It's the same type of thing. You season it and you just bake it, and it actually makes it more crisp. You can do that too. I like to put it in the pan because it's faster, but it doesn't make it crunchy. And with this, I like to put it on my salads or my burritos or burrito bowls. So I just use them for everything. They're so delicious. You can also take your beans and mash them. So I like to mash them and make like dips, kind of like hummus or refried beans. And it's a healthier version of refried beans because you're not actually frying them, right? You're just mashing them. And you just season. So let's say you take pinto beans and you're making your own refried beans. You just season it with a little bit of onion powder or garlic powder and salt and pepper. So you can use that obviously for your burritos and burrito bowls. You can also use it as a spread. So I like to put smashed beans onto pieces of bread and eat it like that. It's very delicious. What else can you do with your beans? So you can obviously add it to so many dishes. Soups, chilies, pastas. Yes, you can definitely add it to pastas. Pizzas. I like to add black beans on the top of my pizzas that I make. Oatmeal. So lentils go good with oatmeal, red lentils in particular. So if you need some protein in the morning and you're concerned with eating oatmeal, you're not going to get enough protein, you can easily add in some lentils. Smoothies. Really just about anything you can add beans. So all of you guys who are concerned with getting enough protein during this time, beans are definitely a go-to. You're going to have to eat a lot of them, but you definitely can use them as a source. Potatoes and sweet potatoes are another item that I said that you should stock up on. So you can substitute your rice, pasta, and even bread with potatoes. So you see this picture here on the right. It has sweet potatoes as the bread. So you can actually slice your sweet potato and put it in your toaster, and it'll cook the sweet potato, and you can use it as bread. Now, cooking your potatoes and sweet potatoes, you can spiralize them, you can chop them into cubes, you can cut them into fries or bake them whole, right? And season them. There's so many different ways you can season them, and it makes them all unique. These are my favorite listed here. So rosemary and salt, paprika, garlic powder and salt, chili powder, cumin, cayenne pepper and salt, garlic powder and Parmesan cheese, salt and pepper. And then when you bake them, you have different options. Sometimes I bake them with nothing at all. I just put them in the oven and I don't add any fat at all. Sometimes I like to drizzle some oil on there and sometimes I like to spray them. So it just depends. You know, when I add the oil, it does have a different consistency than if I just baked it without anything at all. Boiling your potatoes. And boiled potatoes you can easily add to salads. And I know a lot of times people think of potato salad, but when I say salad, I mean a leafy green salad. And you add your potatoes on top with your other vegetables that you're adding on. You can get baby potatoes, boil them, and then mash them and bake them. So you see that picture here. It's really delicious. Obviously, you can make mashed potatoes. Some people, they like mashed cauliflower. You can mix the two together and have half mashed potatoes and half mock mashed potatoes together. And also air fried mashed potatoes is really delicious. So you take your mashed potatoes, maybe it's your leftover mashed potatoes, you season them, and you put them in your air fryer, and it makes these yummy puff-like potatoes. Sauteing potatoes is also a great option. I like to grate my potatoes because it cooks faster. The smaller you cut it, the faster it cooks. You can also dice it or slice it. And so I like to make hash browns, so I'll grate my own potatoes and put it on the pan. Sometimes I use oil, sometimes I don't. You don't necessarily need oil to saute. That's a big misconception. Now the texture is going to be different, and it does take longer if you don't use oil. So keep that in mind. You can add a little bit of water to help with the cooking, but it does take longer. Now, one popular meal that is made during this time is the poor man's meal, which was very popular during the Great Depression. And there's different varieties or variations, I should say, of the poor man's meal. This is one that I came across, and I've been making it, and my husband and I have been enjoying it. You dice some potatoes and saute that with some onion, and you have healthy hot dogs. And you're probably like, healthy hot dogs. We actually use vegan hot dogs, to be honest with you. Um, but you can find low-fat hot dogs or sausages, or use other meat if you want to use chicken or whatever you want to use. And you can saute that with it. And when you're done, you have different options. So the recipe that I've used, I've been adding in some jarred tomato sauce, just a few tablespoons, not a whole lot, just enough to kind of give it a nice coat. But I've also made it before with some cheese, which is really good. Not a whole lot of cheese, you just want a little bit of cheese here and there. And some turkey bacon, or you could use the vegetarian bacon as well. If you're trying to find a very low fat version, that is an option as well. And it's really good. There's other variations where they add like green beans, it might have ground beef in there. So there's many different variations, but it's definitely a go-to meal if you're trying to save money. Other ideas, so sandwiches, of course. You can easily use your leftover fish or chicken or meat to make different sandwiches. Obviously, the traditional sandwiches, PB&J and tuna fish sandwiches are great. Salads, I've been eating a lot of salads because I grow lettuce. And so I'm able to eat salad every week because of that. I have yet to go out and buy my own lettuce because my plant grows so much lettuce I can't keep up with it. So another reason why you should start a garden. um, but there's different things you can add onto your salad, of course. So the beans, the berries, dried fruit, boiled potatoes, like I said earlier, canned tuna, different vegetables. Pastas. So pasta is very easy that you can make, right? We all know spaghetti. But I want you to think of ways to add in more vegetables, of course. And remember, there is a shortage on meat, so there are other alternatives to some common dishes that you are familiar with, such as lentil lasagna. I've made lentil lasagna many times. It is delicious. It is satisfying. So you can do that. You could do pasta and peas. There's many different recipes that also have the legumes in there, so you can use that. Tex-Mex, again, obviously beans work in Tex-Mex dishes. If we're talking about tacos, burritos, enchiladas, all those things, you can definitely have your bean dishes. So if you're running low on meat, definitely do that. And then baked goods. So I've been making my own homemade pizza. It's so delicious. So I couldn't find regular yeast, but I found pizza dough yeast. So I've been making pizza dough from scratch, and it's actually quite delicious. And just add a ton of vegetables on there. Don't go overboard with your added meats, pepperoni, sausages, and cheeses, and it can be a very healthy meal. If you have access to other yeast, then please go ahead and make your own breads and whatnot. I did that in the beginning, but I ran out of yeast and I couldn't find any more. But there's nothing like homemade bread. There's nothing like buying the bread in the store is not nearly as good. Here's some snack ideas. I've been making a lot of these banana oatmeal cookies. So as my bananas get ripe, I'll take them and I'll mash them and I'll add in some oats and then whatever toppings I want. So lately I've been putting in cranberries, but you can put in chocolate chips, coconut, nuts, seeds, whatever you like. And then you just bake it for 10 minutes. It's very easy. You don't feel guilty about eating it. There's no sugar added unless you're putting the chocolate chips in, obviously. So it's a great snack or dessert. Popcorn snack, so you can pop your own popcorn. I have an air popper. You can also, there's a way to pop your own popcorn kernels in the microwave, so that way it's air popped still. The microwave popcorn is very high in fat, so it's better to air pop. But with that said, you can easily mix in dried fruit, pretzels, nuts, chocolate chips, whatever you want. One thing I like to do, I like to mix cocoa powder and sugar together and drizzle that on my popcorn, and that's a good sweet snack. You can also make your own granola bars. So taking some dates, you soak them in water, chop them up, and then add in some almonds, chia seeds, sesame seeds, cocoa powder, nut butter, and vanilla. You put that in a food processor and it makes like a paste. And then you can add in whatever types of mix-ins. So I like to use coconut flakes and dried berries. And so I mix those in and then I press it into a pan. I'll put it in the freezer so that way it gets a little bit hard, and then I'll cut it into my bars. And then for desserts, I love my black bean brownies. I've been making black bean brownies for many years. Um, it's it's not the most healthiest, but it is definitely better. So you take your black beans, you add in some eggs and oil and vanilla and your brown sugar and cocoa powder, and then you can easily add in your mix-ins. And then banana and ice cream. Banana and ice cream is definitely healthy because it's fruit. You have your frozen bananas plus your milk or milk substitute with whatever fruit you want. You just blend it in a blender, and you can easily make your own ice cream with that. So with that said, I know that I provided you guys with a lot of different tips. For some of you, you might still have a hard time getting access to food. And so I just wanted to let you know that there are other options available. Here where we're at, we do have the North Texas and the Tarrant County food banks. And if you go to the Tarrant County Food Bank and click on where it says find food, it'll show you different places where you can get access to food if you qualify. And also remember that many schools are providing school lunches and breakfasts and some even dinners during this time. So there is food available out there if you do need it. So just check with your local food bank and your school districts. So with that, I know I gave you guys with a lot of tips and some recipes. Some of you might have your own recipes that you want to share. Please do. You can go ahead and post them, and that would be helpful to me as well, right? I always love some recipes. Or you might have questions, so you can go ahead and post your questions that you may have as well. Thank you for listening. I hope that this information was informative for you. And you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and eat healthy.